Hello and welcome back to TriggerSmart. And today we're going to cover some of the myths and things going on around the Charlie Kirk theories. And a lot of you have actually reached out to me and sent me emails and a lot of information. And of course, you've all asked to stay anonymous, which is interesting as well. But let me go ahead and jump into the first thing here. So this site here, this is Charles McClintock Wilson. And apparently this is a photojournalist. And they have a ton of stuff covering Free Palestine and everything else across the board. But what I wanted to show you here is on that day, on September 10th, 2025, this photojournalist was here taking pictures. So based on the pictures, there's some takeaways. So if you look here, you can clearly see his long chain. You can clearly see that he's not wearing body armor. You can see the shape of his entire chest. You can see his nipples. You can see his chain. You can see everything. So now let's go to look at some other photos. Get even closer. You can see from the side, no body armor. From the front, no body armor. No body armor. So I think no body armor. So I think at this point, we can just get rid of the body armor theory because everyone keeps saying, make sure you look at the theory that it bounced off of his body armor. If he has body armor, this is the thinnest body armor I've ever seen, and it's not going to stop whatever's coming. So we can just get rid of that right away. So no body armor. And then you can see here a better picture of his chain in HD. So it is a fairly durable looking chain. Continuing forward. So here you can see the person next to him has a clear earpiece. You can clearly see the shadow from it there. And you can see it wrapping around the front of the ear. You can see he clearly does not have one. He has nothing on him. But we'll keep going. Because this is when he's handing out hats, right? So let's get to where he's actually speaking. Okay, and a better look at his chain again here. So we can zoom in on that. Okay. And you can see here, he's an even better shot. You can see the different points on his shirt from whatever he's wearing. Whatever that pendant is, pretty good sized. And as we can see, there's a lot of cameras around. Very high definition. Okay, now this right here, this would be whatever microphone or whatever people are talking about here. Now this magnet is not standard for DJI mics or anything that I've seen, so I'm not sure. I mean, clearly they have millions of dollars and could probably spend whatever amount of money they want on whichever one they would use, but again, you can see pretty strong looking chain. And then you can see that he had this microphone or this magnet or whatever this is here. Okay. Now this is a perfect shot to show. We can clearly see his chain there. We can see the little magnet or whatever that is from his mic. 100%. There is no earpiece. There's no wires. There's nothing else around him. There's nothing wired up his shirt. There's nothing clear going to his ear. He 100% does not have an earpiece. And it does appear too, just one side note, the shirt looks pretty kind of like fluffy, like loose. Like maybe it's a very extremely lightweight shirt. I don't know if that matters with the cavitation and things that we saw, how the shirt puffed out, but maybe it does. So again, another close up, clearly no earpiece, nothing. So we can lay that to rest, no earpiece. And here's another shot. Trying to see if we can zoom in and see what brand that mic is, and then you can see there's something decently sizable here. It's heavy enough that it's pulling his shirt down and the magnet's holding it kind of off at an awkward angle there. So whatever's here is decently sizable. But again, you know, some people have already disproved the theory about this, but we can talk about that more later. All right, and that's it for those shots. So as you can see, extremely high definition images. Now, you can also see these other cameras and things that are back behind him. So if you want to go in there to this website and you want to start looking through, you know, some of these other cameras and people that are around, they have really good bokeh. So it does blur the background quite a bit. So you can't see everything, but in shots like this, you know, you can see the operators and the different people that were around him, you know, people that were in the crowd, his security, guys back here. You can see that open tunnel. So this is definitely a good resource if you want to see some HD images. Obviously, it didn't catch everything, and the images of the actual shooting itself, I don't know if this photojournalist got them or not, but they're not here. And then we had a subscriber choosing to remain anonymous. that sent in this video and just kind of showing their interpretation of the direction of the projectiles that were caught in the images where it shows the three objects.
Pro, it's a high precision. If you know how to use it. So we move forward. And then this so-called object, bullet. Appears first here. Without even seeing the impact.
So what this person is saying is that the bullet or whatever that projectile is actually behind his head and has not impacted him yet. But then watch what he says next.
And then this object moved from left to right to the screen. Now we can see it here.
So basically what he's saying is he's going through this video that he, I believe, screen grabs from somewhere. It's showing the projectile moving away from Charlie. And you'll see here in a minute, when it gets closer to the tent, the rear of the tent, where it's alleged that the projectile started, that is when he gets hit. So let's look at that.
Still no impact. And now we see it here. And then we see the impact.
So now, if you look at that,
it's about 2 frames later.
So if you look at what he's saying, we can see that projectile that was alleged to be the first thing that showed in the 3 that were going towards his head. In this video, he's showing that it's actually going away from him. And at the same time, this one is up by the back of the tent. Then you see his shirt go up, and which is probably about the time that he got hit. So if this is true, then that means that there were multiple shots that were done, or at least one shot that got captured as it went past and another one that actually hit him. So again, some people said there were possibly multiple shooters, and some people were saying they heard multiple shots. So could this be something to that theory? So now based on that alone, if you only had that evidence, you would say that the first bullet was possibly flying past him and then another one hit him. And it could be multiple bullets. So multiple shooters, multiple bullets, multiple shooters at the same time. It's really hard to know. Again, these are just theories. So thanks again for whoever sent that. All right, let's get back into it. And really quick, there's a few other things that I wanted to bring up here. So first, this is the view after. Obviously, this is a crime scene. And he had these gates in the front. Here's his tent. And obviously, there were a ton of people standing around it, cameras and everything. But you can see how accessible it is back here. And this goes way back. Like there's a long drive that goes behind this and open space and all that. There's no building up there. It's wide open. So, I mean, a shot from behind theory gives them a lot of options from this point of view. And the next, people were saying, could this camera or any camera from any angle have been the item that shot him if it was from behind or from the front? You know, any of these cameras, theoretically, yes. If you've ever seen that movie, The Bodyguard, that's what they tried at the end to kill Whitney Houston. They had a camera with a gun inside of it. So, and this has been done for a long time. I looked it up on ChatGPT. There's tons of cases of it, tons of case studies, assassination attempts. So this right here, and the fact that the guy pulled it down and pulled something out of it, supposedly an SD card, all of that stuff, you know, sure. Is it suspicious? Kind of weird, maybe. Is it possible? Of course, yes. Do we know 100%? Don't know if we ever will. And if you look here, you can see it again. It's back there, almost a direct line of fire. And if you look at the angle of it, let me zoom in a little bit. So now if you look at the angle of this, if something did theoretically fire out of this camera, whatever this is back here, it would theoretically be almost exactly in line with those bullets that we were seeing or whatever those projectiles were that were marked on the Jason Goodman videos and images. It's interesting. I don't know. What do you think? Do you think it was from a camera? Now, many of you asked for Callie Kukul to come back, and that is our mystery investigator that, as said before, has sent emails to, as far as I know, dozens of different creators. Some people have spoken on some of the facts or observations or theories of this person. And I also shared a few videos back. So if you're not sure what I'm talking about, you can go back and watch those first. And then this is kind of a continuation. So here we have Kali Kukul kind of addressing your comments, your questions, and then other creators that have said certain things as well. So this question was, where's the hole from the bullet in the backdrop if it came from the back? First of all, while further reviewing the footage, I actually found a cue that might directly suggest disturbances of the backdrop. So not the actual hole, but disturbances. It's an occurrence people have been noticing but didn't have an explanation for. On the following footage, there's a black piece at the back top of the tent from the inside where the backdrop meets the roof and tent. Less than a second after the shot, some black fragment flies erratically and falls away, and the original black piece is lost. So as we can see here, there's this little black thing here that the blue arrow is pointing at. And as we scroll down, you see it here. It's kind of falling. And whatever it is, seems like it might be pretty light. It looks like the black piece near the roof of the tent is some kind of clip holding the backdrop attached to the upper beam. It probably had to withstand some tension, holding the backdrop's weight and stretching it. I believe the bullet might have come through the backdrop, briefly yanking the backdrop, straining the clip, which partially cracked the piece. And then with less than a second of crack spread, some part of the clip couldn't withstand it, and it broke off, shattered, flew away. The black flying piece is moving a bit erratically. You could say it's a bug, but the thing is the black clip at the tent roof immediately lost some of its size at the same time. The tent construction is rather complex and frames per second of the video is very low, so we're probably not watching a continuous motion. But the piece bouncing off construction beams of the tent, and in the last of the frames, the shape of the flying piece is pretty clear and doesn't look like a bug to me. Then they say, by the way, the video is 30 frames per second, but every 2 to 3 frames are the same. So it's effectively more like a 10 to 15 frame per second video. So in other words, it seems like it's been doctored. Most devices, no devices, especially phones and things like that, by default film at 10 to 15 frames per second. Next, there's the reasoning about the possibility of the bullet going through the backdrop and the bullet, not the hole, being captured by the camera. Let's imagine a sharp, headless nail going 2,600 feet per second through the backdrop. I assume we can agree that such object could possibly travel through the backdrop in a way that would be undetectable, even to a close standard by. But now you take something larger, big blunt hammer, for example, and smash the backdrop, it would not even go through. The backdrop would bulge. He's saying that, or she is saying that in theory, whatever's going on is somewhere between those two. So something that's undetectable, all the way up to something that wouldn't even go through and would make a lot of racket on that tent, which something like a bullet. I can imagine it being sufficiently closer to the nail than to the hammer that it could go through a lightweight perforated backdrop, which was installed under some tension and with some support to not wave around in the wind all the time. In a way, that low resolution, low frames per second video might not capture the mild effect at the right moment clearly enough. To be clear, the ripped pieces of the fabric can close up behind the bullet, and also the hole could potentially be where the black print is, in which case you probably wouldn't see it, at least not on camera. And finally, the hole could be a spot outside of the view angle of the camera, or it could be covered by Charlie. So now with this part of the theory, a lot of people are saying there should be a hole somewhere. So there's a lot of reasons why there could be a hole that can't be seen. There's a lot of reasons why, especially depending on how tight the tent was and how fast the bullet was and how aerodynamic it was, we know they're designed to be ballistically coefficient, that it could have gone right through it without disturbing it. That one kind of remains open. New supporting material, flashes in the tunnel. Shout out to Miss C. Now, this is Kali Kukul giving a shout out to one of you subscribers who have sent information directly to this person. So I've heard that many of you are sending information to this person. Your bright and generous audience has sent some very relevant material in line with the tunnel theory. See the footage below where there are flashes visible in the reflection on the phone screen. Considering an observer's direction, the phone angle, and its angle, the reflections point into the tunnel. The flashes appear at the very moment of the shot. So for the first frame, there's 2 flashes. One goes out and the other stays for 3 frames. The appearance of the flash moving is probably caused by the guy moving his phone, changing the angle slightly. Okay, so these 2 spots here that you see on the phone, those are not the cameras, right? So these are the flashes, or a flash that's hitting 2 surfaces on the phone that are causing this reflection here, according to this theory. And you see, this is the same time that he's getting hit. You're still seeing part of the flash. And this person, Kali Kukul, is saying is possibly moving their phone, reacting to the shot and everything. And then he's hit. And you see the flashes over here now. So depending on how the phone's moving, the flash starts over here, moves towards the center, And about the time he's fully reacting to the hit now, that reflection is further over to the side. So in this case, what he's saying is, or what they're saying, and Miss C, is that if there was a shot or something from behind in the tunnel, you would see that reflection from the blast here. And moving on, you still see it. So what are your thoughts on that? Do you think that the flashes and the lights are just a coincidence? Do you think maybe they could just be some of the lighting from the other cameras and things? Flashes from another camera? I don't know. And then we move on to Mr. L from Cali Kukul. New supporting material. People keep checking an almost empty trunk and suspicious baggage. Again, shout out to Mr. L. This is a very interesting video, noticing the insides of the trunk before the event started, and even more importantly, that some individuals often kept leaning into the seemingly empty car trunk, sitting at the edge of the trunk, and turning their heads to look inside. Now, I found this very interesting. I had not seen this before. Appearance of the specific type of car for reference. So you can lay down the seats, or in this case, you can take the seats out, and there's a good amount of space. Chrysler Pacifica, that's what everyone's saying that vehicle was. There seem to be some bags in the trunk of the car next to the tent. Those could possibly serve as a hideout. However, someone could just as well be hiding on the floor behind the second row seats. So we're talking about this here. So whatever all of this is, someone could be on the other side of it or in it. We don't know. And of course, it's grainy footage. Why not, right? Attention of some of the people hanging around the car seems to be directed towards the car and its trunk a lot, especially the kid on the right, who's leaning on the trunk and then sitting there, and later again turning his head inside the rather empty car. The person on the left sitting on the trunk seems to be the police officer who's been widely observed in the tunnel before and after the shooting. So here we have this kid here hanging out, and then supposedly there's a police officer here, and there were some other images of the officer having a badge and everything. So I think that is legitimately an officer, and I think he was part of UVU, if I remember correctly. Correct me if I'm wrong, put it down in the comments. Later, the guy in the white cap leans into the car, again joined by the kid turning inside. The kid is not looking where the left guy could be unpacking something. The kid's looking more into the car, like more directly. So if you look here, the kid's right here looking into the car, and here's the gentleman. They keep looking back into this vehicle. Here's the kid again after Charlie arrived, again looking at the car trunk despite it being shut. So now the kid is staring into a vehicle that is closed at this point. You can see that here. So you have this kid, or someone dressed like a kid with a hat, just obsessively looking into this trunk. Here's a police officer talking to a security guy. Right after that, the security guy seems to go to drive people away from the car. Just 12 minutes later, the police officer seems to be making people move away from the car himself, too. So you have these guys that are kind of ushering people away from the trunk of this vehicle. Now, again, this is just a theory. People are going to say, you know, you're driving this into the ground with the car and shooting from behind and everything. This is just more information coming out that I'm just sharing. And you have this guy over here ushering people away as well. Then you have this guy and this guy keeping people away from this vehicle in the trunk right here. And then another part of this theory here. This is a new one that I hadn't heard specifically. And finally, here the possibility of people making sure the chair Charlie was using was in the right spot. A guy sits on the chair, seemingly places the camera on a low tripod on the floor, and briefly looks towards the car, possibly checking the line of sight. This one could mean something or not. So they're saying they're doing what these are just screen grabs from the video. So this person who's setting up the chair is looking back towards that vehicle. So this is possibly implying that this person here is making sure there's line of sight to that vehicle. Then the security guy secures the chair in place with his hand for quite a while until Charlie finally sits down. It could be to make sure the chair isn't moved into any other spot accidentally. Although in this case, considering the chair was on an elevated platform, it could be just to secure it so Charlie doesn't move and he doesn't fall down. So here you see this gentleman. I think this is one of the security guys everyone was very suspicious of, is holding this chair in this one spot to make sure 100% that either he doesn't fall or that he sits in this exact spot that we just saw previously. It looked like they were trying to get line of sight in, possibly. So now before we get into the actual reconstruction of the scene that they did, which is pretty interesting, give me your thoughts. Do you think that any of those theories stick? Do you think that that person was trying to hold that chair in a specific spot and getting line of sight to that vehicle. All right, now let's get into the reconstruction. Finally, here's a reconstruction of the scene also provided in that video by Mr. L. It seems to suggest clear line of sight. I think it came through the backdrop instead, since the security guy seems to block the view of the edge of the tent, but it's hard to see and the perspective can be deceptive. So this is their theory here. This is Mr. L and Kalikukul. This is kind of their drawing of it. So we have the alleged shooter location. This would be the vehicle right here in the blue. This layout is just to get the proper perspective. And then this perspective here would be inside of the tent. Charlie and his bodyguard inside the tent. So now if the shot came from this position, it would go through the back of the tent and then hit Charlie Kirk here. So it would pass, this would be the pole of the tent, theoretically. So it could have possibly gone through the tent or possibly could have slipped past, but you know, there's no way to know that. But this is kind of the layout that everyone's talking about here. Is vehicle here, shoot through the back of the tent or open air if the tent's not in that location, that spot, and hits Charlie Kirk there. Bodyguard fairly close. And this is the top view. So this is facing out. So the crowd would have been out here. So we have the vehicle or the shooter from the rear. Charlie Kirk is here. The tent pole is right there. So depending on where this is positioned, if this was a shooter in this vehicle, or the vehicle had something equipped to do a shot, it could have gone on the inside of the pole and not hit the tent, or on the outside of the pole and hit the tent. So we don't know, but either way, this would be the line of sight. This is where Charlie was. This is where his bodyguard was, based on the layout that we have. Here's the security guard after he moved to the left right before the shot. I think it rather blocked the view around the tent and enabled line of sight through the backdrop, but both is possible. By the way, the guy on the left discussed in a previous video turns out to probably be the kid who was previously sitting at the edge of the trunk. So now if you look here, you see this is the security guard guy that moves to the side, and this is the child, the one who kept looking back in the vehicle. You can see trunk is open, and it looks like both, I mean, the hands are up. As far as I can tell, it's really hard to tell with this. Let me see if I can zoom in on this. Okay, so now zooming in, to me, either the kid is straightening their hat or covering their ears. I really can't tell, to be honest. But I always thought that was interesting. Could just be fixing the hat. Could be covering the ears. Don't know. And then Kalikukul goes on to say, I brought up the observation that it looked like maybe the kid was covering his ears or something. Person says, thank you for the observation. See the source video. Maybe he intends to cover his ears at first when he heard the trunk opening. However, and then goes on to adjust his cap. So we really don't know. Maybe he felt like he's been holding his hands up for no apparent reason for too long, and at that point didn't want to look suspicious. Maybe he also just wanted to look larger, take up more space, and provide more visual cover. And as a follow-up, a couple of frames after the potential backdrop clip fragment flies off the view, a bit similar object appears in the lower left. It appears to fly towards the viewer from the general direction that the piece disappeared a few frames before. Could it be the same fragment that bounced off towards the viewer? I guess we've all dropped something on the floor before, and for the life of us, we couldn't find it, and we finally found it in some ridiculous place we wouldn't expect. Things do bounce randomly. And the thing is white now instead of black. But I believe the black piece has little white shades around it. I could potentially be a clip for a fragment which tore out of a piece of white fabric that it was attached to. So in theory, think of it like maybe a bullet came through the tent, and this was a piece of the fabric that was knocked loose. And in the shade, the black part's more visible, whereas the direct sunlight, the fabric's more prominent. Or it could be a bug flying around pretty fast with its wings. But let's ask ourselves if really all the snapshots look like a bug, and if possibly some downright don't. So what we're looking at now is this white piece here, which is blown up here. So this is falling during the moment that it happens. Again here, blown up. And again here, very clear in front of that text, blown up again. And white shades around the black. You can see there's white shades around the black pieces. So it appears as though maybe a piece of the tent was knocked loose if there was a shot from the back. This could also be, like I said, a wad or something similar. If there's some kind of device that fired something, this could be a bug. This could be nothing. What do you think? Showing again closer. So this is just kind of getting everyone updated. Many of you said you wanted to see what more Kalakukul has sent. And yes, there is a lot more. I know that Valhalla VFT and some other people were saying that there would not be enough force from the pendant going up into his neck to actually cause the damage. Based on my research, that's not necessarily true. It gets very scientific and very nerdy. If you guys want to see that, let me know in the comments. Say you want to see the detailed breakdown of how the pendant could theoretically pierce the neck. Other than that, as always, I appreciate you guys watching. Like, subscribe, and share this around. And let's keep digging.